Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Thursday, October 31st, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to talk about what we've been up to at the water cooler. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta. And joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
Weekend Editor Brad Oman.
Hey, that's me.
Senior Editor Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And writers Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello, folks.
Okay, so it's Halloween today. Tonight, I'm wondering, what are your guys' plans? Are you doing anything exciting? Jacob, what are you doing?
Literally just going down the street to my friend's house, shutting all my lights off so my dogs won't be bothered by trick-or-treaters, and I'm going to sit on his driveway with him and hand out candy and drink. And that's my entire plan. Nothing special at all. My Halloween climaxed when I did 9 haunted houses earlier in the month, so I'm going to sit this one out when it comes to heavy-duty Halloweening.
Are you just going to be in a lawn chair in your normal clothes, or are you going to dress up?
I'm going to wear my I have Agamotto replica prop so I can be Doctor Strange on vacation or something I don't have to do any effort for.
Okay. Brad, what are you up to?
Absolutely nothing.
No. What?
I might go see a movie with my girlfriend, but
will it be a scary movie?
Probably not. She's not the biggest horror movie fan. She gets scared too easily, and can have nightmares. So we might go see something that's in theaters nearby.
Ben, what about you?
I'm probably not doing much of anything. I'm certainly not dressing up and going out. My wife and I might watch a horror movie or something. We have a couple things on the DVR we might check out, like I don't know, The Exorcist. I've somehow never seen The Exorcist, or The Haunting from the 1960s. That one's also on the DVR, so probably one of those.
Oh, Ben, those are both great. You should watch both those and report back.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. HT, you must be, you're the youngest person here, so you must be going out and doing something exciting.
I have no plans. My roommate is going out to a concert with her boyfriend and leaving me alone. So, I don't know. I might do laundry or something. I actually got invited to a party in Brooklyn, but I don't want to go by myself because all my friends have plans. So I'm just going to sit by myself alone in the dark.
Okay, then. Chris, you are the horror guy on this podcast. Halloween must be something special to you, so you're probably doing something exciting, right?
No. I mean, Halloween is a big deal for me. It always used to be a big deal for me. I used to always, when I was, at working office jobs, I used to always take the day off and also the day after, and I would have all these things. But I don't know. This year, I didn't really do much. I mean, I'll probably watch something scary, but I do that pretty much every week anyway. And I don't know. I'm not feeling it this year. It's like 75 degrees here, which is like awful. Like that's not Halloween weather for me, and I don't feel like doing anything. I don't know. I just nothing is happening. Are you
going to be handing out candy to kids?
I guess trick-or-treating in my neighborhood starts at like 3 p.m., which is like less than an hour from now, and I don't fucking feel like it. Like, just stay away from my house, kids. If you're listening, children everywhere, just stay away.
Is there any movie that you must rewatch maybe not on Halloween, but Halloween season?
I mean, I have a handful of movies I always rewatch in October, and I've pretty much done most of them. So yeah, I don't know. It's an off year. I'm just tired. It's a tiring year. I want 2019 to get out of here. Maybe next year will be better.
Well, it's almost over. Tonight I am going to West Hollywood's Halloween Carnival, which is actually not a carnival at all. It's basically just like a street that's closed down, and people in costumes take it over and are drinking, and it's an insane party. I think it might be the biggest Halloween party in the world. If not, it is the biggest in the U.S. So Kitra and I are going to get dressed up as, I have a hot dog costume, and she has a hamburger costume, and our dogs also have costumes. So we're going to take them to the Halloween Carnival, and hopefully have some fun. But okay, let's get into what we've been doing and not what we are going to do or not do. Let's start out with me. I've had kind of a busy week. A lot of it involves magic, so I'll kind of fast forward through a lot of that. I went to the Penguin Max Expo, which is a magic convention in Culver City. It was fun. You don't really need to know more than that. The Magic Castle every year for Halloween, it is like the biggest week of the year. Like they go all out for Halloween. And this year they went with a Cursed Temple theme, which basically means that they were, didn't have the license for Indiana Jones, but it was basically Indiana Jones. So the entire Magic Castle was turned into a temple. And I've tweeted out a link to a video of that. So if you want to see that, it is actually very impressive what they did. And like at the end of the temple, there's actually there's this whole scavenger hunt. And at the end of the temple, there is a moment where you can actually like grab the idol and replace it with something. And if you have figured out all the clues and got everything right, you win. So I did not try that though. I just watched magic because I'm lame. And what else did I do? I went to a bunch of haunted events. So I went to 2 haunted events I've never been to in LA. One of them is called Reign of Terror. This is a haunted house that is in the middle of nowhere. It's in Thousand Oaks, which is like way out in the valley. To travel over an hour to get there. And this is in a mall, which is weird because you don't usually see these. I'm not sure what that part of the mall normally is, but they have a huge part of this mall that they sell tickets. It's like $20, or if you want you spend $35 if you want a fast pass, which gets you in front of the line. And this is usually like haunted mazes last maybe like 5 to 8 minutes long usually. This one was like 25 minutes long from start to finish. It went through a number of different themes, and each room was just so well, even though like you can tell they don't have the budget of like a Halloween Horror Nights or even Not Scary Farm. It was just so well planned and orchestrated. And I know, like, I think the day after Halloween, you can go to this haunted house and do it with the lights out. And by that, I mean, like, everything's lit nicely. They do it with the lights out, and they give, like, the leader of your group, like, a glow stick. So it's even, like, ultra scary. I'm tempted to even try that because that sounds like it'd be crazy. But I highly recommend this. If you're in LA and you're listening to this right now, I think this goes on for a couple more days, or you could always catch it. I think it happens every year. It's called Reign of Terror. It's worth making the trek out to Thousand Oaks to see. And the other haunted event I went to is this thing called Los Angeles Haunted Hayride. And I've heard about this for years. This takes place in Griffith Park in an abandoned section that used to be an old zoo. So, abandoned old zoo. I had always thought that it was kind of like a more kid-friendly haunted event, like, with like just pumpkins and stuff like that. But it is actually a haunted, like, there are scare actors. There are mazes. So we went with our friends Dan and Rosanna, and it was a lot of fun. The centerpiece is actually a hayride where you get in the back of a tractor that's filled with, the back is filled with hay, and you're taken through the abandoned zoo, and, all these scenes happen around you, and scare actors scare you. They have a couple good haunted mazes, which are good, and they really have more room than I think like the other haunted events, so they play that up. The one thing that was actually really interesting about this is they had one thing called Trick or Treat, where it was kind of like you go through a series of twists and turns to different houses, and you would actually knock in the house, and in each house there would be a different thing. So the one house would have like an alien that would come out and scare you, and another would have like a zombie, and they would give you candy. So it was, it was a little bit more family friendly, but I almost wish like someone like Disney would take this approach with their Halloween parties, because that was kind of fun. We recorded a video for this for Ordinary Adventures. You can watch that. I'll put a link in the show notes. But I enjoyed both of them, so I'd highly recommend Reign of Terror and LA Haunted Hayride. Although I think LA Haunted Hayride is pretty expensive. I know my friends got me into that one, And I was looking this up. This is kind of strange. I didn't know this, but L.A. Haunted Hayride started on Shark Tank. In an episode in one of the first seasons, they went to Shark Tank to pitch it to the sharks, and now it's become a huge like L.A. haunt kind of thing. So there you go. Jacob, what have you been up to?
Nothing that exciting, Peter. I'm going to be the guy who talks about, weight loss and exercise today because some people really love that and let us know the reviews on iTunes. But I'll be fast. Pretty much over the past 6 months or so, I've really doubled down on strength training, and my cardio has been mostly on a stationary bike. I've up to about 13 miles a day, 5 days a week on a stationary bike, and followed by extensive weightlifting and strength training. And I kind of fell off of jogging and running. And I tried to get back into that and start adding regular runs a couple times a week into my rotation as well. And I started using the Map My Run app, and this is my favorite fitness app I've ever used. It is very, very simple. You just give access to your GPS, and you hit start, and it just tracks where you're running. It tracks on a map, so you can review your route afterward. Draws a little map for you. It tells you how long you've been. It tells you your calories burned. It gives you all the stats and information. It little voice will tell you when you've reached mile markers, so you can be listening to music, and a voice come on and say you've reached 1 mile, you reached 2 miles, you're averaging this amount on time and speed. And I love it. I mean, and also just seeing all the days, next to each other, you go the little chart where it says here's the little calendar of all the times you've been, your time, calories burnt, distance. It's just a really nice thing to have. And as somebody who tracks my other progress in my home gym, on the wall, but there's not a really good way to track, running or jogging or even speed walking on that wall. So this app really makes it kind of an addictive process. So that's Map My Run. It's a free download, although you can pay for a version with more features, but so far I'm enjoying the free version just fine.
Well, very cool. And that is called Map My Run?
Map My Run.
So do you have you done anything where you've tried to map your run and made a drawing out of it?
This is what that app does. I mean, previously what I would do is I would literally get in my car and I would drive my walking distance with the speedometer, the odometer going, and try to figure out what my distance was. But it's always inaccurate. I didn't know what I didn't know any of the actual hard numbers of actual distance on foot or calories burnt, or just trying to time myself on a stopwatch app, and it never felt accurate, never felt good. And but this does all that for you in a way that I'm finding incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, well, very cool. Brad, you probably did the thing most interesting out of the whole bunch of us. You went to Pixar.
I did. I went back to Pixar. This was my third time visiting their animation studio campus over in San Francisco. And I went for a special early press day for Onward. So I'm not allowed to talk about anything, but we saw a good chunk of footage, and I checked out the gift shop and got some cool things for Christmas presents coming up, and obviously some stuff for myself. And yeah, it was, I always love going to Pixar. It's, the presentations they do are always fascinating, and it's just great to get a glimpse behind the making of these kinds of movies. So, we'll have coverage for Onward, coming sometime in the near future before the movie comes out in March. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. People that have never been to Pixar might not know this, but for every film, they kind of transform their campus, and try to have artwork and stuff for that film. How is the campus transformed for Onward?
So they had the actual the van that the characters Barley and Ian drive around in on campus next to the Pixar lamp and the star ball that everyone always takes pictures with there. They actually made a real version of the van, so it has the unicorn painted on the side of it, and the van's called Guinevere. We've seen it in the trailer, and it's pretty cool to see it as a real van. And then inside the lobby, you can check my Twitter and see the photos. They had these big banners with art on them that have a very epic style, kind of like Magic the Gathering cards or other fantasy based games, showing off various items and locations and characters that you'll see in the movie. Things like the Phoenix Gem and the Manticore and stuff like that. So you can get a glimpse at some of the stuff that was on display there. It was pretty cool.
You mentioned you went to the Pixar gift shop, and people might not know, but there's a lot of exclusive merchandise that you can't buy anywhere else. So what did you purchase?
So I got a cool new Incredible shirt that has Frozone on it, and what else did I get? I bought some stuff for my parents. I got Incredibles hat for my dad and a Pixar sweatshirt for my mom. And then what else? I got myself a keychain that has the Star Ball on it. I hadn't seen that there before. I thought that was pretty cool. And my girlfriend got a hat, and then we got some stuff for her nieces and nephews. And the one thing that I got, which I think, I don't know, I assume you could probably have gotten it in stores, but I had never seen it, because if I did, I would have bought it by now. But they had a stuffed toy of Gerald from Finding Dory.
Wow.
And I love that goofy character.
Yeah.
So I saw it, and I bought it immediately.
That's awesome. Kitra will be jealous because she loves Gerald. HT, what have you been up to?
This past weekend, I went to visit Sleepy Hollow, which is about 30 miles north of New York City. It's in upstate New York. And that was my first time visiting it. I actually wasn't aware that it was so close to the city, but it was a nice just trip up. And we did a nighttime tour of the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery with lanterns and all. And it was something called the Mayhem and Murder Tour. Yes. So the tour guide regaled us with all sorts of sordid events and deaths that had happened to the residents of that cemetery. I was really excited, though, about holding the lantern, because I felt like I was living my Nancy Drew Hardy Boys dream. So that was really cool. And the cemetery, too, was just really amazing to walk through, and especially at night, which I've never done before. And there we also went to the Great Jack-O-Lantern Blaze, which is this big sort of Halloween event that takes place at the Van Cortlandt Manor. And it's basically like a theme park almost. It's all of these little these carved pumpkins that about 7,000 of them that are shaped into random statues, or there's a Statue of Liberty. There were a couple of dinosaurs. There was one that was a carousel, and that was really amazing to see, and a bridge that was made entirely of glowing pumpkins that were carved as well. And so that was just amazing. It was just I couldn't fathom the fact that 7,000 of these pumpkins were carved and lit, and just kind of turned into this a little bit kind of a gaudy but really fun and really just theme park-esque experience. So that was really cool to see. And yeah, that was my weekend up in Sleepy Hollow. I unfortunately did not run into any headless horsemen or of the kind. It was just a very idyllic, sweet, fall-looking town, sort of northeastern town.
I almost wonder, do you think the people that live in Sleepy Hollow or live in Salem, Massachusetts, enjoy that? They are kind of they probably celebrate Halloween all year long. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, they're leaning into the Halloween celebrations. There was Halloween decorations at every restaurant, every store we were at. They had named a bunch of the streets into Halloween themed streets. They definitely were very grateful, I'm sure, for the tourism that comes with Halloween every year. And I actually heard that Sleepy Hollow, it wasn't the official name of the town until just recently. It was known as that way back when, but then it had another designation before they reclaimed Sleepy Hollow as the town name.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on to what we've been reading. Jacob, what have you been reading this week?
Well, I decided to dive into Stephen King's The Outsider, a book that came out last year and was very quickly snatched up to be made into a 10-episode miniseries on HBO arriving next year. And this is a very surprising book, so I don't want to go into too much detail because it starts out as being very much like Stephen King trying to do his True Detective, an extremely gnarly, gritty detective story about a small boy who's murdered and the cop in Oklahoma who's trying to get to the bottom of it. And the character's played by Ben Mendelsohn in the TV version, and Jason Bateman is the guy who gets arrested for the murder in the opening pages of the book and presumably the opening scenes of the miniseries. And essentially, the book presents an impossible case, kind of thing where either there's a criminal genius at work or there's a horror twist. I won't tell you which one it is because it saves that reveal pretty late. But I'm very curious to see how it gets adapted because there's some stuff here that not quite hard to swallow on the page, but it's going to be. I think it may play easier in a book than it does on a 10-episode HBO Prestige series starring Ben Mendelsohn. So we'll see how that plays out. But it's creepy, the mystery's engaging, and strangely enough, it is a weird direct sequel to King's Bill Hodges trilogy, which was Mr. Mercedes, Finders Keepers, and End of Watch. 3 books I have not read. So suddenly a character from those books pops up halfway through and becomes a major character, and Stephen King's universe is already intertwined. I suddenly found myself on the outside, becoming like, oh, I need to go read these 3 books to understand where this character comes from. So that's my next goal. I'm going to go read the rest of Stephen King's books I have not read. I made a list. I think there's 17 of his 70-something books I have not read. So I'm going to be trying to tackling the rest of those before his new book arrives in May. And interestingly, his new book arriving in May, it also stars his character.
You're going to read 17 books by the time his new book arrives in May?
Yes, that's the goal.
That's crazy.
I read The Outsider, which is a 600-page book, in a couple of days. Stephen King's compulsively readable. A lot of those books in that list are novellas, like Blockade Billy and Elevation, which are 100 pages long. So I think I can do it. I just need to really batten down the hatches and work on it. I want to be able to properly enjoy The Outsider. So that's why I read that one first. But Chris, I know you looked at my list on Twitter. You said, were you the one who said I should read different seasons next?
Yeah, that's of all the books you listed, that is the best one, and that is also a bunch of novellas, which all but one have been made into movies already. That's the book with the Shawshank Redemption in it, and The Body, which inspired Stand By Me and Apt Pupil. So that of all the books on that list you posted on Twitter.com, that's the one I would recommend starting with.
And where do you fall on The Outsider? And did you read the Bill Hodges books before this, or were you familiar with this character before I was?
I'm mixed on The Outsider. I skipped the Bill Hodges stuff just because I don't they didn't appeal to me. I'm not really into mysteries, and those are King doing mysteries. The Outsider is okay. It's I like the way it started, but it's the book it was sold as is only the first 100 pages, and it turns into a completely different thing. And I liked the first 100 pages more than I liked the rest of it.
So do you share my concern? Not concern, but curiosity that people are going to see what this is based on the trailer for the HBO show and be like, whoa, this is not what I was being sold, because I feel very strongly about that trailer selling the first 100 pages as opposed to what the book actually is.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm actually curious to see if they change things around and tone them down a bit. It is going to be interesting because they don't really hint at supernatural stuff at all in that trailer. So I am going to be curious to see how it goes over.
See, what we're going to need to do, Jacob, once you finish all these books in May, you and Chris are going to have to collaborate on a definitive ranking of every Stephen King book ever published.
Chris, would you be down for this in May?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I would.
All right, I have a new goal. But by the time I think his new book, Let It Bleed, comes out in May, I'll have finished the bibliography of Stephen King, and we will be able to do a ranking tied to that book.
Yeah, we're planning things that far out at this point. Okay, so Ben, what have you been reading?
So I read a book called Game of Thrones: The Costumes, and this is one of 3 books from Insight Editions and HBO that I got over the past few days, and actually the one that I thought that I would be least interested in. There's one about the photos from the show, from the set photographer, and then there's the art of Game of Thrones. And I was really excited about both of those. And the costumes, I was like, okay, sure, yeah, I'll just knock this one out real quick. I'll read this or sort of skim through it and then get to the stuff that I'm really excited about. And this book is super captivating. As somebody who loved the show, I was shocked with how instantly I was just pulled into the intricacies of how all of these costumes came together. So the book is written by Michelle Clapton, who I think won 5 Emmys for her costume design on Game of Thrones, and it's also co-written, I think, by Gina McIntyre, who wrote Stranger Things: Worlds Turned Upside Down, which I think you have, Peter.
Yeah.
You and Brad both own that book. But it is a super compelling read. It gives you all these insights into the characters of the show that you wouldn't really get from the show itself. Like, in the world of the show, Michelle Clapton decided that the Greyjoys, who are this clan of like seafaring raiders, would have used fish oil to coat their clothing and sort of make it waterproof. And the pungent smell of that oil would have been another way for them to sort of assault their enemies while they raided villages and strongholds and stuff that the Greyjoys always do. And like almost every single costume choice that she made was based in a quote unquote realistic decision making process like that, like taking into account, the resources and the wealth and the environments of the people who, are living in different parts of Westeros and Essos and all that. And I just thought it was really, really fascinating, like all of the extra work that she did that went into these costumes that really, builds on story and character and all of that stuff. There's one other example that I wanted to point out. She said that she made sure that the shoulders of Joffrey's outfits were often really wider than they should have been, because in her mind, it reflected his delusional belief that he was like more intimidating than he actually was. So it's these tiny little subtle details that you probably wouldn't really pick up on when you're just watching the show, for a traditional like narrative experience. But if you really like zero in on these costumes, you can learn so much more about the characters and what they think about themselves based on the work that Michelle Clapton did. So the book is called Game of Thrones, The Costumes. I would highly, highly recommend it. I was really, again, super shocked at how much I loved reading this thing. And it comes out on November 5th. So if you want to check that out, again, yeah, highly recommended.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to what we've been watching. It seems like a few of you have been watching Dr. Sleep. I have not yet seen this. Let's start with Chris. What did you think?
It's good. I posted my review on slashfilm.com. Everyone listening should go read it. I had a few reservations about it, and it's hard to talk about those reservations because they're kind of spoilery, but it boils down to this. So, as I'm sure most people know, the Shining book is a lot different than Stanley Kubrick's The Shining movie. And Stephen King has always been a little bitter about that. He does not like the changes Stanley Kubrick made to his book. So when it came time for Mike Flanagan to make Dr. Sleep, which is the sequel to The Shining, he had a choice to make. He could either stick entirely to King's book, which is a sequel to the novel, or he could find a way to incorporate the Kubrick-ish changes into the film. And he took the latter route just because it would be silly to ignore what many people consider to be like one of the best horror movies ever made. So he had to sort of adapt the book King wrote while also adapting the stuff that Kubrick did. And the problem with that is Kubrick and King have, or in Kubrick's case, had very different outlooks on life. Kubrick was a lot more negative towards humanity than Stephen King is. Stephen King, for all the horror he writes, is really kind of a softie. He has sort of faith in humanity, which I don't think Stanley Kubrick did. And those sort of idealistic interpretations of the world clash. And so when Dr. Sleep is trying to stick entirely to King's book, which it does for a large chunk of the movie, it works really well. But for like the entire last act, it incorporates Kubrick stuff into the movie. And that's when it starts to sort of go off the rails, because it starts feeling like a completely different thing. And that sort of like threw me for a loop a bit. But overall, it's got a lot going for it. It's a big emotional horror movie, which, is kind of cool for a studio to release. Rebecca Ferguson is phenomenal in it. This is like the first non-Mission Impossible role that someone has actually given her that is good. Like, she's been stuck in like junk, like that Men in Black remake. Like, this actually gives her a lot to do, and she's like the best part of the movie. So, long story short, I liked it. I didn't love it. I liked it.
Yeah, I'm edging toward love here, even though I do agree with you that the weaker aspects that you describe are the weaker parts of the movie, and they're all super spoilery. I can't talk in detail, which Chris and I are already planning a spoiler review. We're going to do a spoiler podcast, hopefully. So we'll talk about that. And strangely, I do think the absolute best scene in the movie comes towards the end, but it's kind of surrounded by stuff that I don't think works as well. But this is a long movie, 2.5 hours, and maybe for the first 110 minutes, I thought this was the best Stephen King movie I've ever seen. When it's sticking to the actual book, which actually is not a great Stephen King book, it's only an okay Stephen King book, it captures what makes most of his work so well that I was going, good God, is Dr. Sleep going to be the best Stephen King movie ever? And it just almost is. But the Kubrick stuff that kind of invades in the last act, I appreciate what it's going for, and I understand why it's there. And I'm not as down on it as Chris is, but I do think that it is what doesn't quite work. And we'll talk more at length about that when the time comes. But I've already talked a little bit about this when I visited, the junket in Colorado. But I haven't heard a word from Ben, who I don't think you even read the book. Have you, Ben?
No, I haven't, and that's where I'm coming in with a totally different appreciation or interpretation of this movie, because I just have seen The Shining and this movie, so I haven't read either of those books. And as somebody who has a deep appreciation for The Shining, I really kind of came away from this with like the opposite feeling as you guys. I couldn't wait for the last act of this movie to happen. In fact, I actually thought that it was way too long at 2.5 hours, and that a lot of the storytelling setups in the beginning could have been trimmed, because I just spent most of the movie waiting for the inevitable to come. And I'm trying to like avoid actual literal spoilers here, but I just like was impatient for a lot of the movie. And I do think that it's well crafted and certainly like, yeah, well done on a just a basic filmmaking level. There's a lot to like in it, but I just thought in terms of like a propulsive narrative, I thought that it sort of dragged its feet a little bit, and that may be because it was sticking too close to the book. I don't know, but I just, as a viewer who only knows the movies, I just couldn't wait for the final act to finally come around, and I was mostly satisfied with what I saw. I do agree that Rebecca Ferguson was really good. I think this movie is kind of like a superhero movie for, it's like it's as close as a big studio horror movie gets to being a superhero movie, because of the quote unquote powers that these characters have. Nobody actually refers to them as that, but you can sort of see how Warner Brothers is probably like, all right, yeah, we can, superhero movies are like the dominant form of pop culture entertainment right now, so we can get away with, giving this movie maybe a little bit bigger budget, because it has a lot of shared DNA with that type of storytelling.
Yeah, I feel like in Stephen King's books, the shine, the psychic abilities, definitely are a bit more propulsive, a bit more, flexible. Whereas in Kubrick's vision, the shine was really just an excuse for people to see abstract and horrifying things. Flanagan really leans into, people who can shine in different ways, battling in different ways. So it really does become, reminds me a lot of like almost like an X-Men movie. There's almost an X-Men vibe here. But King himself, is such a pop culture fan. I don't think he would take that as a diss. I think he would really appreciate the fact that there's a movie out there that's a big budget horror movie about people in a haunted hotel using psychic powers to battle each other. I think he'd be pleased that that's out there.
Yeah, and just really quickly before we move on, I just wanted to say that I didn't really think this movie was that scary. Like, when it finally ends up where it ends up, that was when the suspense sort of ratcheted up for me. But for the most part, I thought some of the main villain and the cohorts surrounding her were like a little more silly than scary, and maybe it's just because it's treading narrative ground that we've seen so many times before. But I don't know. What did you guys think about that? Did you think Dr. Sleep was a scary movie?
No, but nothing really scares me anymore except Life, which is the real horror movie. Am I right, folks? But yeah. I will say this, Ben, as silly as you think, they're called the True Knot, the villains. As silly as you think the True Knot is in this movie, they're 10 bajillion times sillier in the book. Mike Flanagan actually finds a way to make them a lot more interesting in the movie than they are in the book.
Yeah, the True Knot suck. They suck a lot on the page, Ben. So when Chris and I speak of great relief of the True Knot in this movie, imagine the page.
Yeah.
Okay, I still need to do this, But let's move on. Chris and Jacob, you also saw the new episodes of BoJack Horseman. Jacob, let's start with you on this one.
Okay, so this is the first half of the final season. It's 8 episodes. The final 8 arrive in January. And after watching these episodes and like really thinking about it, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm prepared to call BoJack Horseman the best American animated TV show of all time. I mean, The Simpsons has Golden Hour, but it's been bad for so long. And I'm trying to think of another American animated show that has been this good, this funny, this experimental, and this bold, and this emotional for as long and at the quality of BoJack. I mean, there are episodes this season and in past seasons that are doing things that can only be done in an animated show. This isn't like, a show that feels like we're just going to animate a sitcom, or we're just going to, tell stories that can be told in another medium. There are ideas, visual concepts, and motifs in BoJack Horseman that are animators generally using the medium in ways saying, what can we only do with this medium? And that's on top of brilliant character writing, like it hurts. Like, this show hurts to watch in all the best ways. And on top of being just so silly and so funny, and the way to it, like, without spoiling anything, there's an episode this season where it's an episode-long argument between two characters who are having this brutal, real breakup, unaware that their friends have thrown a surprise party for them and are all hiding in the house, like, privy to their argument and trying to, like, not be seen. So it rotates between this brutal argument while the slapstick of characters evading them. And I've never seen a balance, like, where the comedy does not cheapen the drama doesn't cheapen the comedy. And it's doing it in ways that just... it is as good as The Simpsons ever was in its early days. When I say Simpsons early days, I'm saying maybe seasons 4 through 8, probably up until now, the best stretch of animation in American TV history. But I really think BoJack tops it. Chris, am I being hyperbolic?
Man, I don't know, because it is so good. I don't know if I would risk saying it's the best animated show of all time, but it's definitely up there. I am like in awe of this show because from a distance it looks like a silly show about animal people, and it is that, but it's so emotionally like honest. It's probably like the most human show ever created, which is odd to say since all the 90% of the characters are animals, but it understands the human condition and depression and anxiety and self-loathing better than pretty much any form of entertainment I've ever seen. And the fact that it's this like goofy cartoon on Netflix that does that is incredibly impressive.
Yeah, and without spoiling anything, we'll have to talk more when the season's completely over in January, Chris. But episode 7, where it tracks all the characters finding pieces of happiness where they can. Then episode 8 threatens to tear it all down. Then it ends on a cliffhanger. And I am dreading what happens to these characters in January. I've never had a knot in my stomach for a casting character like this before. I am so upset about what may happen to them. Yeah,
I'm a little unhappy that they had to split it like this, because I don't want just like waiting around for that sword to drop is going to be uncomfortable, and I just know like the minute it comes back, it's going to be not pleasant to see. But I'm very excited for it to come back.
By the way, I've never heard anybody talk about animated characters in a television show like you are, Jacob. Like this, like I don't think I've ever cared for anime. Like usually they're kind of like disposable vessels for humor and escapism. And the fact that you actually are like on the edge of your seat, dreading or wanting or whatever you're saying about this upcoming season, I don't know. That's just incredible for an animated show to do that.
I know that The Simpsons will have like episodes where characters have growth, but they always abandon it by the next episode because they always return to status quo. BoJack's writers have a long memory, and so do its characters. Nothing that happens, no one who's hurt, no one who triumphs, no one who stumbles. It's never forgotten. It's built into the show's DNA that these characters grow, change, and remember. And it means that every single episode matters in a way that no other animated show, at least in America, has done.
See, I'm going to have to see this. I think when it first started airing, I know it had huge acclaim, but as Chris said, it looked silly. It's about
Yeah.
a horseman. And the thing that there's so much, we're in peak TV. There's so much great television out now that I feel ashamed to say this, but like when I was a kid and I'd be watching The Simpsons or whatever, my dad would be like, "Why are you watching those silly cartoons?" And I was like, hated him so much for saying that because I'm like, these cartoons are so great. They're more than cartoons. They're, it's an animated show, whatever. But I feel like nowadays I don't have time for quote unquote cartoons, and that makes me sad because I'm becoming my dad. But I don't know. Maybe it's because maybe I just don't have time for these episodic, escapism kind of shows. And it sounds like BoJack is not that.
It's not. The one thing I will say, Peter, this is for the people listening too, is that kind of famously they sent out the first 6 episodes to critics, and the first 6 episodes of the series are them kind of finding their feet. And I know saying like, "Oh, it gets good" is always a lame thing, and always a dumb thing because we all live in amounts of time.
Yeah. But
literally, the first half of BoJack is the weakest the show ever is, and that's what's just pretty funny. And I remember IndieWire posted a retraction when they saw the second half, saying our review was wrong. The show is great, and they had put out another saying like we'll never review a show again until we've seen a complete season, because they were so blown away by the back half of season 1, and then the show stays that good. So if you're watching season 1 and saying this is only kind of funny, this is only kind of cute, I would recommend sticking around at least until the back half of the season, because it really does find its voice and it really does become something that I think is remarkable.
That's what happened to me. I gave up after 4 episodes because I just thought it was fine, and I never dived back into it. But I think I'm going to have to add it back into my list.
Yes. Okay, so what have I been watching this week? As I said, I spent 2 days at a Magic convention. I spent 2 days at the Magic Castle. I spent 2 days at haunted events. So I haven't had much time to watch anything. But when I was watching stuff, I was watching screeners because Apple and Disney both sent their screeners for their upcoming shows for their streaming services. I got the Apple TV screeners first, and I read off all the shows to Kitra, and I was like, which one do you want to watch? I was kind of excited because we had all a ton of choices, and she was the morning show, and I was actually at first very disappointed because out of all the Apple shows, this did not look like something that was for me. I had not seen a trailer for this. I had only seen bits and pieces in a montage of the trailer that they showed at the Apple event, and it looked kind of like a workplace dramedy, and it just didn't. I don't know. Actually, as a whole, I should say, I think I can speak for this entire podcast as a whole. We've been very underwhelmed by what we've seen leading up to the release of these Apple TV shows. Me personally, it looks very generic and very kind of networky, in the way it's shot and presented. The ideas for these shows aren't really the most compelling in my mind, or at least maybe that's what I thought. So we dove into the morning show, and I want to say first off, the first 10 minutes has Jennifer Aniston saying the F word 4 or 5 times. So I know we had reports that these Apple TV Plus shows would not have adult language or adult situations, and that's just wrong. Maybe they won't have nudity, but this is definitely a show for adults and not for kids. This is a show about, if you don't know, Jennifer Aniston plays the host of the morning show, which is basically the Today Show, alongside Steve Carell. Overnight, Steve Carell is Me Too'd and basically fired by the network, and there is a search for a replacement for him, and her career is kind of in life as goes into chaos. This I'm surprised by this. This show feels like The Newsroom, which I really, really love. It has lots of walking talks. It is trying to say something bigger about what's going on in our lives right now, or maybe our lives a year ago. It's kind of sadly, this whole Me Too thing seems almost already out of date, which it probably says something more about society than whatever, which is very sad. But this comes from one of the directors of Parenthood and Friday Night Lights, one of the writers, Mimi Leder. It has she directed at least the pilot episode. I saw a couple episodes. This show has an amazing cast: Reese Witherspoon, it's just like on, she is bringing it. Steve Carell is great. Billy Crudup is awesome. Mark Duplass. This show has lots of music, which clearly Apple is spending the money to promote, like lots of covers and stuff like that. It's funny that everybody on the show is using Apple products. At one point, Steve Carell looks at his phone and he has like Apple News notifications. It's a little distracting, but the show is very soundstagey. That's probably one of my biggest complaints. I don't like Jennifer Aniston. She's better in this than she is in anything in the last like couple decades, but she still feels more like a sitcom actress than whatever. But I am very surprised by this. This is a show that I'm gonna keep on watching. I've only seen the first 3 episodes because that's what they sent out to press. I know critics in general are kind of mixed on this. Some have really liked it. Some have called it kind of like a Sorkin light. And yes, it is trying to be like Newsroom or Sports Night or like any of those kind of like shows, and it doesn't have the amazing script that Sorkin brings. But it is really, I don't know, I am enjoying it. Both Kitra and I both really like this, and we're in for more. And so I'm shocked. I am really surprised because I didn't think I was going to like the show at all. The other show we started watching is For All Mankind, which I know people probably know that this show is about the space program. It's from Ron Moore, who gave us Battlestar Galactica. I really actually somehow avoided what the premise of the show was. The premise of the show, and I'll give you the most minor spoiler for the first 2 minutes of the show here, because I think this is what the premise of the show is the show begins with the scene that we've seen many times before. It's people from around the world huddled around TVs or intercutting. They're watching the TV as the first landing on the moon has happened, and there's an astronaut who's about to get out and land, step onto the moon for the first time. It's a great achievement for humankind. And as the astronaut lands on the moon, instead of that classic Neil Armstrong quote, we get a quote from a Russian. And we realize that the Americans were not the first people to land on the moon. It was the Russians. So this show is an alternate history. It's showing us what would have happened if this one event was different. And it seems like it's leading to what if the space race didn't end, is basically the question that it asks. And it does so in this like Mad Men style drama. It's even though this is a fictional take on what would have happened, it reveals some real things about people and places that exist in our reality, which is kind of interesting. Seth Gordon, who I liked in King of Kong and has done some comedies I don't like, it brings it in this pilot. And I have seen the first 2 episodes of this. I'm really in for this, and I've heard that basically now that I've watched this, and this is the show that everybody's talking about, critically, this is the most critically praised show of the Apple TV Plus shows. From what I've been reading, what the premise of the show is that Ronald D. Moore wants to every season go through like a decade of the space program, and eventually it's going to reach our point and go up to, it's building up to Star Trek, basically. I mean, it isn't a Star Trek show, but it's building up like, what if the space race didn't end? What if our journey into the stars didn't end? And I don't know, that's just really compelling. I highly recommend checking this out. I know a lot of people probably aren't going to jump on and subscribe to Apple TV Plus, but I know a lot of people actually get that for free if you bought a new product from Apple and stuff like that. So I would highly recommend For All Mankind. I don't think the morning show is for everybody, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to keep on watching it. I also watched some Disney Plus screeners, which I am embargoed until next week, so I can't talk about, but I wish I could. But yeah, more on that next week.
Peter, I have a question. The Apple TV Plus stuff. One of our writers, Josh Spiegel, did an article for us that went up today while we were recording. We did a survey of everything that's at launch, saying like, is this worth $5 a month at launch? And his answer, despite liking For All Mankind like you did, was a resounding no. He felt like that. He said, wait until there's more here, or wait until something else happens. Do you think that that morning show and the other shows, C and Dickinson, is if I know $5 is not a lot for some people, but maybe a lot for other people. Is this worth sampling, in your opinion?
Well, people are paying $15 a month to watch HBO for Game of Thrones, and I'm not saying that any of these shows are Game of Thrones. They aren't. But, I mean, I'm sure people are paying, $15 a month or the shows before Game of Thrones on HBO. Now I'm blanking of, like, what was hot HBO television before, like, Westworld in Game of Thrones.
Sopranos, The
Wire, yeah. Yeah, I guess none of Arliss. I guess none of these shows are on the level of any of the shows other than Arliss. But I don't know. I think I think for $5, for me, I think it would be worth it. Honestly, most of us in this world get a new iPhone every couple of years. Actually, maybe that's probably no. Most of the people listening to this podcast probably get a new phone every couple of years. Not most of the people in this world, because that is a stupid thing to say. But and I think like when you get a new Apple device, don't you get like a year free of Apple Plus? Am I correct there?
Actually, I don't know. That's a good
correct.
question.
Yeah, any phone or computer or anything, you get a year free.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are going to be in that category of being able to sample this, at least for the first year.
Well, what about me? I'm on year 3 of my phone. I'm on year 5 of my laptop. My Apple TV is 2 years old and it works fine.
Well, it sounds like you're going to get a new phone or a computer soon. That's what it sounds like.
No, they're all chugging along fine, Peter. So, but what about me? Is it worth the $5 for me right now? I mean, I love Ronald D. Moore, but is that show alone worth $60 for a year?
Well, I don't think you're going to need to pay a year for it, but honestly, Jacob, out of anybody I know, I think For All Mankind would be your thing. Like, I don't know, I think you would really enjoy it. It is a little bit more drama than it is like, sci-fi, but it's, did you like Mad Men?
No, that's the thing. Like, Peter, when you told me this was Mad Men in an alternate history, I was sold. I was like, I'm really excited, but I'm also, do I want to give them money for Dickinson as well? And I think the answer to that is no. So I'm really, I'm mulling this over.
You might even like the morning show, Jacob. You might even like it. I don't know. I for me, it's worth my $5. I'll say that much. So I can't make the judgment for you.
All right, fair enough.
Okay. Jacob, what did you watch this week?
I watched Jojo Rabbit. I think the last person on staff to see it. I'm Team Jojo Rabbit. I think the backlash against it is weird and dumb, and I think that Taika Waititi's high wire balance of humor and tragedy works. And I think more importantly, the decision to say that yes, Nazis suck and are the worst thing ever, but also people who have been blinded into fanaticism have the ability to redeem themselves and walk back are both messages that can exist side by side. And I'm glad this movie exists. And I think it's a lovely, wonderful, beautiful little gem of a movie. And it will make my end of the year list in some capacity for sure. Moving on, though, I finished Undone, the other show by the creators of BoJack Horseman, the Amazon show. I talked it up a lot at Comic-Con when I saw the first 2 episodes. And I tried to parcel out. I didn't want to binge it. I watched 1 episode a week. For taking my time, and this is the best show Amazon's ever had. It's not as good as BoJack. It is far more serious. It is a show about a woman who believes she has become disconnected from reality and can travel through time and space with the help of her dead father. It is a metaphor for mental illness. It is very powerful, uneven, but ultimately really impactful, and I'm really glad I stuck with it. I don't think it ever quite reaches the highs of maybe of episode 2, but I really hope they get a season 2 pickup. I really hope this is a hit for Amazon, because I really want this team of writers, like I said, with BoJack ending, I want them to have another place to spread their wings and do really experimental, bold animation, and Undone is very much in that camp as well. I have not been on any of the Watchmen podcasts, but I have caught up on Watchmen. It is as good as everybody says it is. I am hoping to be on next week's spoiler episode, because goodness, the show is very much my thing. I love it so much. But we've devoted a lot of time to Watchmen already, so I will move on to Eli. Chris, I need to know if you've seen Eli yet.
Oh, man. Without giving anything away, I'll say I liked it until I didn't. There's a big twist halfway through this movie. Not even halfway, but more than halfway. And boy, does it make it 10 times dumber than it had to be.
Oh, Chris, I'm the exact opposite. I did not like this until I did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Eli is a movie about a kid with a autoimmune disorder who's brought to a spooky old house that's been converted into a clinic. So essentially, it's like, what if Bubble Boy was in a haunted house? And it's directed by a Syrian Foy who did the very bad Sinister 2 and the actually very good The Citadel. And this kind of falls halfway between those two. It's not as bad as Sinister 2, not as good as Citadel. And yeah, I was really not on board with this until there was a very large reveal where I said, okay, I see where you're going, movie. I'll go along with this. And I really did. But as you heard from Chris, you may have the exact opposite reaction. Has anyone else here seen Eli, which is a Netflix movie, by the way? I think it was a studio release. I think Paramount may have made it, but they quietly sold it off to Netflix. Has anybody else witnessed Eli yet?
No.
Okay. Well, you should. It is a 98-minute watch. Maybe a good Halloween view if you want to check it out. But speaking of movie streaming that you can watch tonight, Dracula 2000, streaming on Hulu. This is a time capsule of a movie. It is everything that Miramax thought was cool in the year 1999 for horror movies post-Scream. It is a disaster. It is Gerard Butler is Dracula, and he's never wearing a shirt. And all the people you don't remember from 1999 who are about on the verge of blowing up but never did. It is a bad movie. But also, if you like me and remember vividly renting Dracula 2000 from the Blockbuster aisle when you were younger in the year 2000, you may have a good time revisiting this. Anyone else here want to pour one out for Dracula 2000, a relic of its era?
I saw Dracula 2000 in theaters, I'll have you know, and I'm sure I thought it was like super cool in 1999, and I know I owned the soundtrack on compact disc, but I also know, like, just based on my memories of seeing it, that it's a terrible movie.
All right, and I'll end this with a legitimately great horror movie. That is Silence of the Lambs, which is streaming on Amazon. I actually have this on the Criterion Blu-ray, but I still saw it on Amazon Prime. Said I'm going to watch Silence of the Lambs, and I did. And I feel like because the movie won Best Picture, because it's so iconic, and because it inspired the entire franchise, we may underrate it these days. We may undersell what a powerfully good movie this is, and how scary Anthony Hopkins is, and how like amazingly human Jodie Foster is. And Jonathan Demme, people don't give him the credit I think he deserves as a filmmaker. I mean, he passed away a few years ago, and he won Best Director, but I feel like his choices here are so incredible. Like, one thing I've always noticed, but really noticed this time around, is how every character who's not Jodie Foster is Clarice Starling tends to speak directly to the camera when they're talking to Clarice, which means that you spend the entire movie literally in her shoes. People are staring at you, and you read their expressions of pity, disgust, anger, fear, scorn. And for a movie that's literally about a woman being put to the test in a field, being an FBI agent where she's undervalued, it really allows you to feel her journey in a way that I feel like few other films could have captured. So Silence of the Lambs, guys, still a masterpiece, still one of the best horror movies ever made, flat out.
Hot take right there. I'm kind of wondering, because I know this podcast is generally in love with physical media, but I heard you say, Jacob, that like you have it on Blu-ray, but you saw it on Amazon Prime and you press play on it. Like, how often does that happen? Because a few years ago, when I decided to abandon physical media, that's what happened to me. Is I realized that I was watching stuff on Netflix and Amazon and whatever that was stuff that was in my drawer, but I was too lazy to get up and go across the room, grab it, and put it into.
For me, the big difference is that the Criterion Blu-ray of Silence of the Lambs has all kinds of special features, all kinds of commentaries and docs. So I'll pull down that disc. I pulled it down when I first bought it to look at special features and everything. But when I'm already on the couch, when I've already had 2 alcoholic ciders, when I have a dog or a cat on me, I'm just gonna hit play on the movie. But if I want to watch Silence of the Lambs, I'm really happy I have access to the best possible version of it upstairs in my study where my movies live. So I see where you're coming from, Peter, but like.
What good is the best possible version if you're never going to go grab it off the shelf?
Because when it vanishes from Amazon, and it will, I will have it. Because eventually there'll be 2 movies per streaming service, and there'll be 1,000 streaming services, and we'll have nothing. So I'm preparing.
Okay. Brad, you haven't been on in 2 weeks. What have you been watching?
Yeah, even though I haven't been on in 2 weeks, I haven't been watching much. I've just been busy doing other things with my life, and I hate film and television now. No, but I did take the time to watch Dolomite Is My Name. This was a movie that I was anxious to see because it really felt like a big comeback for Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy is a guy who I liked his stuff when he was on Saturday Night Live. He used to be much funnier, and then around the mid to late 90s, just started making these terrible comedies, and he continued that right on through the 2000s, and he just hasn't really made much of anything that has interested me or had been worth talking about other than his supporting role in Dreamgirls. So I was very excited to see this movie, and it definitely lives up to the hype. This is such a fun movie, and it really has like an independent spirit to it. I'm surprised that we didn't get to see this movie at Sundance, presumably because maybe it wasn't done yet. But it has very much a film festival fire to it. It feels like a Sundance version of Bowfinger, but with blaxploitation style, because it's this true story of Eddie Murphy playing Rudy Ray Moore, who's this struggling musician, and he decides to become a comedian with this character named Dolomite, who's basically this over-the-top pimp kind of character, but who also apparently knows kung fu, is a deadly fighter of crime and whatnot. And it goes through the whole process of him becoming this character and then deciding to make a movie with nothing. He puts his comedy albums and all the profits from it on the line to make this movie with money fronted by his record company, and pulls in as many people and calls on as many favors as he can to do it. And it's such a ridiculous over the top kind of movie, and it's very funny. Eddie Murphy is great, and the supporting cast is awesome too. And yeah, it's just a very enjoyable movie. It's available on Netflix now, so take the time to watch it. And Eddie Murphy is back in a big way, and I'm very excited to see how his career continues to come back, especially with all this talk of him doing stand-up again and hosting Saturday Night Live in December. So it's a good time to get back into Eddie Murphy, I think.
Brad, have you seen the original Dolomite by any chance?
I haven't, but this made me want to go watch it just for a good laugh.
Yeah, it's streaming on Amazon Prime right now. I have it saved in my queue, and I wanted to watch the original before I watched Dolomite Is My Name, so I'm going to try to take care of that in the next week or two. But just for anybody else out there who's listening, I know that the original is on Amazon, and then Dolomite Is My Name is on Netflix.
It does show it does the thing at the end of the movie where it shows the footage from the actual movie for the scenes that they recreated in Dolomite Is My Name. Oh, and nice. It looks like they did a pretty damn good job of recreating scenes from that movie.
Yeah, Ben, try to watch them as close together as you can, because I think Dolomite Is My Name will give you an appreciation for Dolomite, which is it's something. It's a trip, but it's also the context of the biopic may help you appreciate what it does.
Yeah.
Okay, Brad, what else have you been watching?
So, like you said earlier, you watched some Disney Plus stuff. The only one that I got around to is I watched the first episode of The Imagineering Story. I'm just mentioning it just for the record, I guess, because I also cannot talk about it yet. But I will say that there'll just be a lot of cool things to talk about, I think, from this series as episodes are unveiled.
For sure, yes. Ben, what have you been watching?
So I rewatched The Shining before I saw Dr. Sleep, and I'm glad that I did, and I would actually recommend that anybody do that if you're interested in going to see Dr. Sleep, because there are a lot of connections there and visual references and obviously like clear homages, but some stuff that's like a little bit more subtle. Like there's one point where Ewan McGregor's character goes in to speak with somebody, and that person's office looks exactly like the office of of Jack Torrance's boss at the Overlook Hotel in the very beginning of The Shining. And like nobody mentions it. There's no, there's no like overt nod to it. It's just like, if you know the layout of the Overlook Hotel, you're going to recognize that location. And it's not even in the Overlook. It's in like a totally different part of the world. So there are a lot of little visual touches like that I would recommend rewatching The Shining before you go see it. And also The Shining is just really, really good. I think it's also, I mean, yeah, there's a hot take for you guys. The Shining is a good movie, but it's also like so much more subtle in what it's actually about, addiction and alcoholism and all of that kind of stuff. It is about those things, but the movie seems more subtle about it than Dr. Sleep, because Dr. Sleep sort of hits you over the head with its messages a little bit. And I really like Mike Flanagan as a person, from what I've heard of him, talking in Q&As and stuff, and also as a filmmaker from the things that I've seen. But it just seems like it's impossible to recapture what made The Shining so special. So I think he probably knew it was like an impossible task anyway. But so I guess all of this boils down to watching The Shining before Dr. Sleep is not going to do Dr. Sleep any favors in terms of directly comparing the two movies, but I think it will give you a more of an appreciation for the little details in it. So yeah, there's that. And then I also watched Knives Out, which is my number one most anticipated movie of 2019. I was so excited to see this. I've been reading tons of Agatha Christie books this year leading up to it. This is Rian Johnson's new murder mystery that is very much based on those types of stories, and I really, really like this movie a lot. I don't think it's going to outrank Parasite or Portrait of a Lady on Fire in my year-end list, but it's definitely among my top movies of the year. It's everything that I wanted it to be. It's smart, and the dialogue is so great, and the mystery is elaborate, but not too elaborate. And I love the characterizations. I loved seeing if you've seen the trailer, you've seen Chris Evans tell people to eat shit in it. And I just loved finally seeing Chris Evans step out from the Captain America persona after so long. Like, he's been in some things here and there during his run as Captain America. And I love him as that character, but seeing him in this movie made me really excited about the Chris Evans roles that we could get in the future, where I was never really excited about that when he was Captain America. I was just excited about seeing him as Cap again next time. So I'm very hopefully this has this bodes well for Chris Evans' future, because I think there's a lot to like there. Daniel Craig's accent is very extreme, but I thought I was going to be worried and sort of bothered by it for the whole movie, but you really settle into it in the first 5 minutes and never really think about it again. So if anybody's worried about that, put your fears to rest.
Yeah, but the big question is, did it ruin all of Star Wars for you?
Because Rian Johnson directed it? Yeah. Absolutely not. No, Rian Johnson is the best, and this movie is really, really great. So that's Knives Out. It comes out, I think, later in November, so definitely add it to your list of things to see. I also watched, my wife and I were trying to watch some Halloween season movies. One of them that we've had on our DVR for months now is called Arsenic and Old Lace. It's from 1944, directed by Frank Capra, and we actually started watching it probably 4 months ago or something, and the opening text of the movie reveals that it takes place on Halloween. And so we were like, oh, let's just wait until the Halloween season to watch it. So we finally came back around and watched this movie. It actually doesn't really have much to do with Halloween at all, which was kind of disappointing, but it's based on a play, and it's very sort of madcap. There's a lot of crazy misunderstandings, and it's essentially about this guy who marries this woman and goes home to visit his aunts, and his aunts have been essentially murdering a bunch of single old men who don't have any family, because they think that they're doing those guys a favor by putting them out of their misery in life. And he discovers a body, and then all sorts of craziness ensues from there. Cary Grant stars in this movie, and he feels miscast to me. I was reading that Frank Capra wanted Jack Benny and Ronald Reagan and Bob Hope in the role before he ended up hiring Cary Grant for it. And my first thought watching it was, this seems much more like a Jimmy Stewart type of performance, because so much of this movie is characters doing elaborate double takes. Brad, in Saturday Night Live, there's that sketch that Kenan Thompson does where it flashes back and he's like a director on the set of an old movie, and he does this super exaggerated how would you describe it? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, it's just the most obvious double take where he just he blinks his eyes and whips his head back and
Yeah,
forth.
yeah, he like bugs his eyes out and he's like, "What?"
Yeah.
Like, super like over the top, where you would never actually do that in real life. Cary Grant actually does like very close to that in this movie a bunch of times, and it's played mostly straight. So it was a little jarring to see that. But anyway, that's Arsenic and Old Lace. It's kind of a fun movie, but not like one of my favorites from this time period, certainly. So,
Ben, do you want to hear an anecdote about this movie?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is only tangential, but I'll have an opportunity to share my most humiliating moment of my adult life on this podcast.
Oh, wow.
It involves this show. Summer after I graduated from college, I directed a community theater version of the stage play. During intermission, I had to step away to run some technical errands outside of the auditorium, and found myself walking behind a group of people explaining about how it was the worst show they've ever seen in their entire life. So now when I think of this movie or this show, I imagine my creative failings.
Oh no, Jacob, I'm so sorry. That's so oh god, that's like soul crushing.
Anyway, you can move on. I like that story because it's a really good example of like a dream crushed moment.
Oh man, wow. Okay, so then we watched 3 other movies sort of over the past 3 nights, I think. Hocus Pocus, which I'd never seen before, and we talked about this because they're doing a Hocus Pocus sequel. We talked about this on a recent episode of the podcast, but I had never seen this movie, and I thought it was, it's very like people in my generation grew up watching it and really have a fond nostalgic attraction to it and sort of attachment to it. And I totally missed the boat on that. And I was worried that watching it now as a 34-year-old, that I would be really disappointed in this movie. And it's not like The Goonies, which I also watched late in life and just straight up hated. It's better than that, I think, in that it seemed... I don't know. This is another movie where all of the characters seem to be operating at a 10 out of 10 for the entire movie. Just like cranked all the way up. Bette Midler is like so over the top that she's like, gone around the world and back over the top again in this lead role as one of these crazy sister witches. But it's like relatively well made. It's very, very 90s, very of its time. There are like a couple of bully characters that reminded me of Bulk and Scully or Skull from the Power Rangers. It's like,
oh yeah,
very,
absolutely,
very just like the stereotypical bully and his like best friend who just repeats the last line that he said. It's like that kind of vibe. I didn't buy the acting of the lead kids at all. They were just like very like Disney kids.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say actually, because I think like you're right about Bette Midler and the adult actors going above and beyond and being so over the top, but I think the kids are acting in a Disney Channel movie.
Yeah, and the adults, Kathy Najimy, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Midler, you can tell that they're having a lot of fun with what they're doing, even though they're being asked to do a lot of ridiculous stuff. But the kids are just like, I don't know, they kind of seem like wet fish is flopping around on the screen whenever they're on there, so it sort of loses its luster a little bit. But overall, kind of fun. I can see the appeal. I think if you haven't seen this movie, Freeform, what used to be ABC Family, is playing it like every hour or something ridiculous, like back to back all day today. So if you're wanting to check out Hocus Pocus, there's a way to do it. And then 2 other sort of family-friendly-ish movies that I had never seen before were The Addams Family and Addams Family Values, which we watched in back-to-back nights.
Whoa, you had never seen those before?
Yeah, I know. It's another one of those things from that same sort of early 90s time period that I never saw with my own family, and then just sort of grew up past them and never had the reason or opportunity to check them out. But we were looking for something Halloween related, and this sort of did the trick. I think Barry Sonnenfeld directed both of these movies, and you can sort of feel the Men in Black. Like watching this, it's very clear why he was the perfect person to direct the Men in Black movies, because it has a little bit of that same. Not the same tone, but you can tell that he's able to walk the high wire and balance the tones really well. There's a lot of goofy one-liner comedy moments that would maybe feel cheap and sort of dumb in another movie, but I think they work really well here, and that's probably partially due to the cast, which Raul Julia plays Gomez, and Angelica Houston plays Morticia, and they're really great, and their dynamic and relationship is pretty perfect, and a lot of the humor, comes from the way that they deliver lines, and they're just general over the top acting. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with both these movies. I think I liked both of them pretty equally. The second movie I was actually really impressed with, because there's this big Thanksgiving play sequence, and Wednesday Addams, played by Christina Ricci, sort of like puts the whole thing to a halt, like grinds the whole show to a halt, and goes delivers this speech about Native American rights and like indigenous peoples, and it seemed really woke for 1993. Like, oh wow, all right, I see what you're doing, movie. That's nice. So yeah. Anyway, that's Addams Family and Addams Family Values.
Okay, and finally, HT, what have you been watching this week?
I saw a couple new movies, a couple horror movies, and I rewatched one movie. I saw Harriet, which is the biopic starring Cynthia Erivo as the former slave turned abolitionist. And it is directed by Casey Lemons and written by Gregory Allen Howard. It's a pretty standard biopic and like veers on the formulaic side, but Cynthia Erivo is just magnificent in this role. She gives a real soulful and real impassioned performance as Harriet Tubman. And I don't really have a bone to pick with this movie. It's very rote, but nothing is wrong with a good crowd pleasing movie lionizing a historical figure who hasn't really been given that chance to do that in the big screen before. So I think it really works in that regard. And one fascinating wrinkle that I found that Harriet does is that it takes the claims that the historical figure Harriet Tubman talked about, that she received visions from God after she had the severe head injury when she was young. They actually make that textual. So they incorporate this sort of paranormal element into the biopic, which kind of shakes things up a bit. And she, is able to evade capture and has a series of really lucky encounters because of these visions that she receives. And in that sense, it almost kind of creates this superhero origin story for Harriet Tubman, which is really fascinating to watch. And so, yeah, it was good. It's a solid, crowd-pleasing biopic, a little by the numbers, but Cynthia Erivo is definitely the reason to watch it.
What else have you been watching?
I have been watching a few horror movies. I watched A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, which is the debut feature from Anna Lily Amirpour. And it's an Iranian vampire Western film that I remember was kind of all the rage back in 2014. And it recently got added to the Criterion channel where I got to check it out. And it's so cool and stylish. It follows a vampire who likes to travel by skateboard and prey on men who disrespect or assault women. So she's kind of this avenging angel in a way. It's shot in black and white, and it has this real moody atmosphere to it that it could be said it's more style than substance, because there isn't really much to this movie, but the style that Anna Lily Amirpour gives to it is just so evocative and so just hypnotic that it's a great watch, and really interesting, sort of adds an interesting feminist twist to the vampire mythology, which I found really fascinating to watch. So that is A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, and that's on the Criterion channel. And I watched a few other movies on the Criterion channel. I did a double feature of 2 early Guillermo del Toro movies, which were recently added to the streaming site as well. And that's Cronos, which is his debut movie, and The Devil's Backbone. And hot take, guys, that Guillermo del Toro really knows how to direct a movie. I was really astonished by, I didn't really know much about Cronos going into it. I had read that it was a vampire film, but there aren't really the many classic vampire elements in it. It's a movie that's very big, and I was impressed by how dynamic and energetic that this movie, that Del Toro how Del Toro directs this movie. It feels almost like a Hitchcockian wrong man thriller meets like Cronenberg body horror, and I enjoyed it a lot for that. I also really liked that the lead was an older actor. It's an Argentinian veteran actor named Federico Lupi, and I thought that was really unusual in such a sort of high stakes movie like this. It's very action packed. That I had a great time watching it, and I also was surprised to find out that Ron Perlman was in this because I didn't realize that their collaboration began all the way from Guillermo del Toro's first film. So it's a really fun movie to see. Ron Perlman gives this just really delirious performance, and Federico Lupi is great as well as a antique store owner who discovers this strange device that basically grants him immortality at the cost of thirsting for blood. So it's a lot of fun. That's Cronos on Criterion Channel. And after that, I watched The Devil's Backbone, which is a movie that I saw a lot of seeds for Pan's Labyrinth in. And you could say that it's kind of the beginning of Guillermo del Toro's saga of dark fantasy movies that act as political allegory. Devil's Backbone takes place during the Spanish Civil War and follows a young child protagonist who is orphaned after his father is killed by fascists. And he is dropped off at this child orphanage that is being haunted by a young spectral boy that ominously warns that everyone in that orphanage will die. And it's a really great movie that is, a wonderful sort of loss of childhood innocence story to the backdrop of political turmoil in sort of the framework of a ghost story. And it's warmly shot too. It's almost shot like a Western in a way because Guillermo del Toro really amps up the amber hues, and it's shot in this very desolate sort of desert location. I really liked it, The Devil's Backbone, and that's also on Criterion Channel.
HT, excuse me. I just wanted to know if you happen to know Shape of Water and Pan's Labyrinth are streaming as well, because these three make such a great triple feature.
They do. That's what I was thinking of in terms of like Guillermo del Toro's saga of political allegories as dark fantasy. That is a good question that I'm going to look up right now. Pan's Labyrinth is apparently streaming on Stars. So if you have that subscription. And The Shape of Water, I feel like it should be streaming somewhere, and it is not.
Okay, well, you should rent Shape of Water, because I know people are always talking about Del Toro's bigger, more bombastic movies. I think these three are the core of who he is as a filmmaker. I'm really glad you are talking about Devil's Backbone. I think it's the one that people most frequently overlook, I think.
Yeah, I really loved it. It's, again, like a heartwarming ghost story, which is my favorite kind of ghost story.
Yes, and you also saw Parasite again. So not only has the entire Slash Film staff seen this movie, but you've seen it. I haven't seen it yet. Oh, you haven't seen it. Okay, so you're in the same boat as me. So
Chris hasn't seen it yet either.
No, I haven't. I'm going to go see it this weekend, actually.
Aha! Half the staff is with me.
But me and HC have seen it multiple times now. So.
I know, so we outrank you now.
What the heck?
Make up for you guys not seeing it.
Ben and HT are now editors-in-chief.
It's so good, guys. I just want to talk about it forever, but I can't because it would require spoilers. But I have to say, seeing it again is like unraveling a Rubik's Cube that fit together perfectly the first time, and retracing those steps surprise you and unnerve you in a way that is just like, it's just so ingenious. And the first time I saw it in a sort of private screening room with a bunch of other press, and it was a much smaller audience, but I was so happy I got to see it with a bigger audience and a full theater. It was packed. This was like on a Tuesday night, and it was a packed theater, which was really exciting to me. I wouldn't trade that because, this is a movie that deserves and needs to be seen with a full theater. When everything goes down, you could hear like everyone in the audience holding their breath, and that's such just a fun, just great experience to have while watching this movie. The guy next to me was just saying, "What the fuck, bro?" So it's just such a great movie. The best movie of 2019. Everyone see it. No movie will be better than this.
Okay, then. See Parasite because HT and Ben both say it's incredible. So there you go. Okay, so let's move on to what we've been eating. Brad, what have you been eating this week?
Because it's Halloween, I've been getting my hands on some pretty tasty treats. So first of all, this one I don't know if this is new, but it was new to me. First of all, do you guys like Biscoff cookies?
They're fine.
The only time I ever eat them is on airplanes, and I always hate them because I always wish that they were better, that they were offering me something better. But no, I can't say that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I first discovered them by eating them on airplanes, and I really like them. I like how crisp they are, and I don't know, I just really like the taste and the crumbliness of them. And I recently discovered that they have chocolate dipped Biscoff cookies. There's a chain of stores here in the Midwest called Meijer, and they're basically very similar to a super Walmart, where they have groceries and retail stuff and everything. And they have in their ethnic food section, they have a section of stuff from the UK. And Biscoff cookies are very popular in the UK. And I found that they had these chocolate dipped Biscoff cookies, and the chocolate makes them even better. Because I love Biscoff cookies in general, but having it basically is just the bottom part of the cookie with a very thin layer of chocolate, and it's just the perfect mix of that cookie with chocolate. So if you like Biscoff cookies, see if you can find the ones that are dipped in chocolate, because they're a game changer. There's also a new mystery Oreos flavor that's out there. The flavor is definitely not as disappointing as the Voodoo Mountain Dew mystery flavor, which again was a betrayal from the Pepsi company because it was candy corn. The flavor for mystery Oreos, they already pretty much announced what it was, but the taste of it had a very cinnamon flavor, and it almost felt like a rehash of their cinnamon bun Oreos, but just with the chocolate cookie instead of the golden cookie that they did for that one. And it makes sense because the flavor actually turned out to be churro, which was fine. But it wasn't anything that was remarkably different from any of the other similar cinnamon flavors that they had done before. So it was a little bit disappointing, especially because the last time there was a mystery Oreo flavor previously, and it ended up being something similar to the fruity crispy rice that they had done flavor before, but it was specifically Fruity Pebbles, I think. So yeah, Oreo needs to up their game when it comes to their mystery flavors, because all of their regular random flavors they release are infinitely better. And then on the candy side of things, there's a couple new candy bars that I was on the lookout for. So a little while back, Hershey's released a new version of their regular chocolate candy bar that was filled with Reese's Pieces. And they did another thing similar, but they did it with crushed up pieces of Whoppers, the malted milk balls. And so I like Whoppers. I don't love them. I can only really have them in like small doses, like just a very small handful, and I'm good on the Whoppers front. But I do like how when they're crushed up within the Hershey bar, the flavor mixed with the chocolate in general, the malted flavor is much less overwhelming. It doesn't stick with you as long. So I think that if I will have Whoppers in the future, it would be like in a candy bar like this. And then Milky Way released a new salted caramel candy bar. I think you can only get it at Walmart for the time being, but then it'll be everywhere sometime like in the near future. And this was pretty good, actually. I'm not the biggest Milky Way fan, and the salted caramel touch actually made it better for me. I like the way that the salted caramel mixes with the chocolate and everything else inside of the Milky Way. Otherwise, the regular caramel, it's almost too sweet, which I know is weird because, it's a candy bar dummy. Of course it's going to be sweet. But I'm not usually a big salted caramel fan, but I like the way it worked in this particular Milky Way. And then in the weirdest thing that I had is after carving pumpkin, or during carving pumpkins, I guess, my mom had stumbled upon this sparkling caramel apple juice, which everyone knows like the Welch's sparkling grape juice, and it's delicious. And this is kind of the same thing. She found it at Aldi, and it is very weird because the caramel apple flavor is fine in candy form, and caramel is good in warm drinks and sometimes in cold coffee drinks. But having the caramel flavor mixed with apple in a cold juice drink is very confusing to my taste buds, because it has a little bit of it almost feels warm when you drink it somehow. I don't know what the science is behind that or anything, but it's just it's such a weird touch in something that is supposed to be just a sparkling fruit juice. And so if you happen to stumble upon it, I would say maybe just wait, because it's just not that great. There's also a pumpkin spice one, which I am not brave enough to try because, again, it's a flavor that is fine in coffees and even iced coffees. But there's something about a pumpkin spice sparkling juice that just immediately makes my face contort in ways of disgust.
I'd try it.
Well, there you go.
But by the way, you've never had like caramel frappuccinos or anything like that? Because that's a cold drink with caramel.
No, that's what I said. Like it's fine in iced coffee, but this is a sparkling juice and it has a caramel flavor in it. It's just it's very weird.
I'd have to try this out for myself. Okay, what else have you been drinking?
That's it. I'm done.
You're done. Okay. HT, what have you been eating this week?
My continued adventures in Instant Pot cooking. No, that's not what I've been eating, but I have been eating Vietnamese beef stew. I recently made it in my Instant Pot. It's called Ba Kha. And this was a recipe that I was really intimidated by, just because I felt like a lot of prep and a lot of ingredients that weren't usually available to me, but it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. And it was a good day to have stew. It's been a little bit on the nippy side, and I've been eating it with vermicelli noodles. You can also have it with French with bread or with even some pasta. And I'm really excited about this Vietnamese beef stew. It was really good, and it's quite easy to do, even though with Instant Pot it is always kind of a bit of a production. So it took a couple hours, but just very excited about Vietnamese beef stew right now. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to what we've been playing. I'm the only one that's been playing anything this week. I had a game day, which rarely happens anymore, but Jeff Kanata from the Slash Filmcast came over, and we got together with board game designer Jeff Engelstein, who was in town for a convention. Jeff Engelstein has done some great board games. He's done Space Cadets. He's done The Expanse, The Dragon and Flagon, The Ares Project, Pit Crew, a bunch of stuff. He did a version of Survive. He's well known within the board game and tabletop world. And he's actually well known because he's not just a board game designer, but he's also a podcaster and personality. He runs this podcast on the Dice Tower Network called Ludology, which I've been listening to for years now, and it's all about how to design games and how to balance games and how, mechanisms and stuff. It's very, very interesting, very, very nerdy. It was great to meet him, and I had both of them over my house, and we got to play a game of The Expanse, which is based on the TV show The Expanse, but not the book The Expanse, because apparently that's they only had the rights for the TV show. And it was a lot of fun to hang out with Jeff and play this game and hear stories of how he met with the authors of the book, because I guess the book is written by one person. There's a pseudonym of one person, but it's actually multiple people. Something I didn't know. Jacob, did you know this, that The Expanse started out as a role-playing session that the authors had with their friends, and then they decided to write it up into a book?
I actually did know that. I wish more books were written that way, because it's amazing.
Yeah, it was just very cool to hear how he was able to adapt certain aspects of the show and the book into this board game, and it's this really fun territory control game, and within the rounds, your technology is upgraded. It was just a ton of fun. I would highly recommend it. That's The Expanse, and I would also say check out Jeff Engelstein's podcast, Ludology, if you're at all interested in game design. That's not just board game design, but also like they sometimes touch on video game design of some kind. But it's a really good show. I highly recommend it. Have you played The Expanse, Jacob?
I have not, and I have not played the board game or the RPG, which actually came out, I think, last year. It's based on the same stuff. I really like those books, and I still have not watched the show, so I have a lot of Expanse to dive into, I guess.
Yeah, I now want to watch the show after playing the board game, which is kind of strange. But, okay, we have reached the end of today's Slash Film Daily. You can find more of all of our work at slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast, Slash Film Daily, published every weekday on iTunes, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please rate and review this podcast on iTunes. Tell your friends. Spread the word. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, Peter.
Jacob, it's Halloween. Don't you have to, get your Halloween costume ready? And there's more important things to be done than reading out of the gargantuan book of insults, offense, and a friend. I can't even say it. Oh my god. Okay, just read the jokes.
All right. Well, Peter, the thing is, it is Halloween, and the gargantuan book of insult, offense, and effrontery by Louis A. Saphian has gone off to get his costume ready. So its best friend has shown up to fill its spot.
Oh God, the racist joke site again.
Oh no.
Oh no, the racist joke site has not come back. What I do have in front of me is https://www.readersdigest.canada/culture/corny Halloween jokes.
Well, it has to be better, right? Like, we can only go up.
Hey Peter, why do skeletons have low self-esteem? They have no body to love.
Oh.
That yeah, HT loves that because it's a pun.
I do. It made me sad.
HT, why did the ghosts go into the bar?
Why?
For the booze.
Oh, wait. I kind of love these.
Hey Ben, why do ghosts go on diets?
I don't know.
So they can keep their ghoulish figures. Chris, why don't mummies take time off?
Tell me.
They're afraid to unwind. Brad, what's it called when a vampire has trouble with his house?
I don't know.
A grave problem.
These are good. Can you just switch this from now on?
From now on, just read jokes from readersdigest.ca.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, why do demons and ghouls hang out together?
I don't know.
Because demons are a ghoul's best friend. All right, this is too good. I ruined the bit with good jokes.
Yeah, I'm enjoying these. These are better.
Yeah, these are actually good.
Yeah.
Why can't the boy ghost have babies?
Why?
Because he has a Halloweenie.
Oh.
All right, now it's ruined again.
That's bad again.